welcome to the SIP Shelter in Place series on the STIR podcast, brought to you by Gazelle Media. I'm your host, Trish Muyco-Tobin, and I am joined by my Binge Bestie, author, entertainment columnist, and sitcom producer, Debbie Baldwin. Hello, Debbie.
Hey, Trish. Glad to be here.
Well, Debbie, we are mixing things up a bit today and turning our attention to the small screen and TV game shows, particularly the daytime game shows.
Wait, Trish, I didn't give you your intro music. Hold on.
Oh my gosh. With all of the stuff you had to choose from, what made you choose that?
That's Match Game.
Yeah.
So good. And we need long, skinny microphones from like the 70s.
I know. My gosh, that's another discussion. Like game show theme songs, they are so ingrained in your brain.
I'm telling you.
Yeah. Okay. So as some of you know, Debbie limits her must-see list to 11. And boy, Deb, I could tell this was a tough one for you to put together.
I'm telling you, I didn't think it was going to be as hard as it was, but it's a genre of television that has been so expansive for decades that, you know, it was kind of like, oh, do I go with the classic or do I, you know, go with the modern one? I mean, there were some core ones for me that absolutely had to be on the list.
Right. And I'm kind of glad that you ended up with the list that you did. And this is fun. And, you know, it made me realize that a lot of these game shows have been around for decades and decades. You really don't think about that because you're still seeing them. But at the same time, you know, the original ones are just as fun, if not even more fun.
I know. And they keep getting reinvented. And, you know, it's just why, you know, I guess the first of all, it's affordable for a network to say, you know, why go to the trouble of coming up with something different when we've got a fantastic show that's been in existence for 40 years that people love.
You've got a built-in audience, spans over the decades. So,
yeah.
All right. Are we ready to play, Debbie Baldwin?
I'm ready to play.
Okay. Our first game show on the list premiered on CBS in 1961 with Alan Ludden as host, and that is the show Password.
Okay, now Trish, you have to close your eyes because I'm going to show the password to the audience.
Okay. Eyes closed.
Okay, now you can open your eyes and I'm the celebrity and you're the contestant. Antelope.
Deer.
Magazine.
Gazelle.
Hey,
not bad at all. Not bad at all. And then what's the limit of clues that the celebrity can give you?
It was I think it was 3.
Okay. Those were pretty damn good clues.
And there was a great series of SNL skits where it was Kristen Wiig played this floopy Hollywood, you know, grande dame from like the 50s as the password person. She kept just saying the password when it was her turn. And it was hilarious.
It never gets old too. Every time she does it, it's hilarious, as you know, it was the first time you saw it.
And so, Alan Ludden, if I'm not mistaken, is also maybe better known as Mr. Betty White. I think he was married to Betty White.
Well, no wonder one of the more notable celebrity guests of the show was none other than Betty White. Okay, so I did not know that. That makes a lot of sense.
That's off the top of my head, but I think I'm right.
Okay, so this wasn't the longest running game show that we have on the list, but it definitely made its mark. You know, in fact, if you compare it to some of the other game shows, it didn't really run for very long. It ran from 61 to 75. But when it did sign off for its final show, Alan Ludden said, sometime, somewhere, someday, there will be another game show, but never one with the class of this one. So those were his words when he signed off for the final show of Password. And, you know, I do believe him. It was really a classy game show. And it was very
simple, But when you are good at it, because there were different ways, like you could change the tone of your voice to, if the password was Christmas and you wanted to lead your partner into the word, you'd be Mary, and, to
Right.
get them to say it. Or you do, if the password was cat, you could couch your clue as if it was the opposite, dog, like it was just, it was good. It was smart. I loved watching that show. I
Oh,
would watch it
really?
again if it came back.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, so we're going to move on. 1 year later, in 1962, on NBC, this next show made its debut at Studio 8H in Rockefeller Plaza, now famously known as the home of Saturday Night Live, and that is the show Match Game.
Match Game. Match Game was the greatest. Gene Rayburn, the host. Now, hold on. I had to write it down. Oh, we have one celebrity contestant. Now, a lot of Hollywood, not a lot, some Hollywood now celebrities got their start as contestants on game shows.
Oh, yeah.
And Kirstie Alley was actually a contestant. She was at the time a young interior decorator who came on the show as a contestant. And you had the 2 rows of 3 of the celebrities trying to match the contestant would try to match whatever answer, the fill in the blank answer the celebrities came up with Charles Nelson Riley, Fred Summers, Nipsey Russell, the inimitable Richard Dawson. Where would game shows be without Richard Dawson?
Exactly.
With his cigarette lit on the stand, you could see the waft of smoke coming up. But Betty White again. And
yes, she was a favorite guest on this show as well.
And interestingly enough, Alec Baldwin, who now hosts the reincarnation, the reboot of Match Game, has always done a fantastic impersonation of the sort of patriarch of Match Game, Charles Nelson Riley, who was just, every single one of them was hilarious. They were always joking back and forth with each other. You really felt like you were at the party when you were watching Match Game, and they were so funny. And, the show was about to be canceled. And one of the writers gave a sample question to Gene Rayburn, to the producer of the show, and said, what do you say we go a little racy? With, when we're canceled, we might as well have a little fun with it.
Might as well.
And the sample question was, Jane loves to, it was something like Jane loves to pour blank on her husband, or it was something that had a very provocative possible answer.
Sure.
And the audiences went wild, ratings skyrocketed, and they were uncanceled.
Which is a rarity in TV land.
So we take it back.
So yeah, this show's pedigree from the host onto the celebrity guests, as you mentioned, Betty White, our pal Richard Dawson, whom we'll talk about a little bit more later. And also, at one point, game show titan Bob Barker was also a panelist on the show. So yeah, Match Game was really, really just so much fun and so entertaining. And the questions really weren't that hard. They were fun, like, what are the words to row your boat? Just stuff like that, where the celebrities will kind of play with you a little bit. So yeah, that is the show Match Game. So next up is a game show that premiered in 1963, also on NBC. However, the more current versions of it are on CBS, and that is the show Let's Make a Deal.
Let's Make a Deal, which was a huge deal when it was on, that daytime television show. I always remember being homesick from school and watching Let's Make a Deal. And here in the marketplace of America, and Monty Hall was the host, and they do crazy things like the audience all came in costume. It was just a big kind of a Mardi Gras feel.
No kidding.
They picked the host picked the participants at random in the audience. No one was pre-selected. And they would do anything from ask them, then say like, I will give you $50 for every postage stamp you have in your purse, to having this actual deal, which is offering cash or take the risk of door number one, what's behind the curtain or what's in the box on the
One, two, or
floor.
three. Yes.
And I mean, that was a very simple premise, but they filled the time, with commentary about the costumes and the interactions of the people who were there. And you could get like a real prize if you turn down the cash, a washer dryer or whatever, but you could also get what they called on the show a zoink, which could be a barnyard animal, it could be anything.
Every once in a while that will come up.
And what's interesting is the contestants actually won the zoink. So if you wanted to claim your barnyard animal, you went back after the show and said, I won this prize, and the show offered you $100 to not take the zoink and just go on your merry way, because it was too much trouble for them to have to try and, if they're shipping like a cow to somebody's house, it was a huge expense. So they had to get out of actually awarding those zoinks.
Zoink or zonk?
I think it was a zonk.
One of the two.
No, zoink is Scooby-Doo. Zoink.
It was a zonk. So that was fun. And you mentioned those outrageous costumes. Apparently when the show first began, the audience dressed like in regular business attire. And then one day, according to Monty Hall, this woman just shows up in a chicken outfit and she got picked. And then, just a few shows later, the audience kind of picked up, hey, if I dress in an outrageous way, I might get picked. And so that kind of began that really cool tradition for this show. And Monty Hall, my gosh, talk about longevity. He hosted this show for like 30 years. So,
yeah, we have a couple of these hosts who are just, decades doing it, and
oh my
doing
goodness,
it well.
Yes, we have one that's coming up a little bit later, but next up, Debbie Baldwin, I present you with The Answer, the winner of a record 39 Daytime Emmy Awards. This next program is designed as a quiz show competition in which contestants are presented with clues in the form of answers and must phrase their responses in question form. Debbie Baldwin.
What is Jeopardy?
Yes, indeedy. Ding, 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 ding. Okay.
Hey, that's the first one I've ever gotten right.
So Jeopardy premiered in 1964 on NBC, and it's still going strong today, Deb.
It is. And Alex Trebek, just passed away from pancreatic cancer, sadly. He was the name and the face associated with Jeopardy forever. It has evolved with the times incredibly effectively. The questions were always, the answers, forgive me, were always relevant.
Yes.
So they stayed on trend while still staying intelligent. I always liked the Celebrity Jeopardy tournaments, but I know people like SNL spoofs them because, they make the celebrities so uninformed and unintelligent.
You know what? I mean, sometimes you really, there's some revelations there. I mean, even Alex Trebek himself was surprised by Chief Marin when he appeared as a celebrity contestant.
Yes, and they had some amazing celebrities that performed well on that show. And, then there's the obvious, this most recent was this, all of a sudden you can accumulate your winnings and you never get sent home. There's no such thing as a 5-day winner. Then you have the Ken Jennings phenomenon, where, he just won so much money, and it really revitalized the show again because audiences were like, I got to see if he wins again.
Oh my gosh. So Ken Jennings holds the record for the most wins on Jeopardy, winning a record 74 times in a row. 74 times. He won $2.5 million during that streak. He does not hold the record for the most money won. That record belongs to Brad Rutter, who won $4.9 million during his run on the show. But the contestant who has won the most money during a single game belongs to another guy. Do you know how much money you can mathematically win on Jeopardy on a single game?
I do not.
So apparently it is $566,400.
Is that answering every single question right and then betting it all
Exactly.
on every daily double and on Final Jeopardy?
Yes. So you can imagine how someone could really clean up if they did everything right. The person who got the closest to that is James Holzhauer, who won $131,127 in one game. So you really can clean up.
Yeah. And you know,
smarts.
when you think about it, you know, the game shows now, like, it's so funny. You look back on game shows from the 70s and the 80s and think, oh my God, you know, they won $2,500 or they won $500 or something. And now we're like, what? That's nothing. But
Right.
you know, with inflation and everything, it's so
Back
you can
then,
win
there was
$100,000 in one Jeopardy round. That's some serious money, especially compared to other game show winnings.
Yes, definitely. And one other trivia note for Jeopardy, the category that appears most frequently is the before and after category. So I kind of noticed that they do a lot of those before and afters, which is kind of annoying to me because it, you know, makes you think
right. And
a little bit more.
It taxes your brain even more because you not only have to know something, but you have to fit it into the little puzzle.
Exactly. All right.
Jeopardy.
We now move on to 1965 on ABC. This show premiered, and that is the show The Dating Game.
Oh my God, there's another 65 on there. You had me all. Now, The Dating Game is another one that had a lot of celebrity contestants.
Oh my God.
Contestants who went on to become celebrities.
Before they became famous, yes.
Yes, they were not famous when they were on the show. They were on the show as contestants and then went on to become famous, including, let's start at the beginning, Sally Field was a contestant in 1967. Tom Selleck was a contestant twice in the 70s and not chosen either time.
Was that with the mustache or no?
Clean shaven.
Oh, well, that may be it.
Why did I know you were going to ask me that? I checked. Then we move on to 1973. Arnold Schwarzenegger was a contestant.
He was? Oh my gosh, okay.
And then after that was John Ritter.
Oh, Jack Tripper.
I know, everyone's favorite. And then Farrah Fawcett.
Okay.
So that's a lot of famous people going on The Dating Game.
Right. And I think like later on, you even had Steve Martin, Phil Hartman, Jim Carrey. So a lot of famous faces before they were famous.
I mean, it by far and away The Dating Game. I don't know what it was about The Dating Game that had so many contestants that went on to be celebrities.
I'm not sure. Maybe their pool of contestants was a little limited.
Or they only wanted really attractive people, so the pool was a little narrower.
You may have a point there. Yeah, I mean, back in the day, that was probably the goal.
Right.
Yeah. And so everyone's probably familiar with the setup. You know, 3 bachelors are hidden from view, and then you have the bachelorette asking them questions to determine which one she'd go out on a date with. And Deb, do you remember their trademark ending of each show?
I do not.
They blow a kiss goodbye to the viewers. Remember? Yeah.
Of course. I thought it meant like a catchphrase. Now, here's my question that I could not find an answer to. Were any of the setups successful? I wonder if any of them worked out.
Good question. I did not see any of that either. But there was a game show situation that, I can't wait to talk about coming down the list. But you know, this dating game was the first of many shows produced by Chuck Barris. You'll hear that name a little bit later too. It was originally hosted by Jim Lang, but also Elaine Joyce, Brad Sherwood, Chuck Woolery. It went through a slate of hosts, but you know, the setup has remained the same.
I know. And you just think, when you think of the dating game, you think of those 3 guys sitting in those high directors' chairs with the curved wall and then the girl on the other side.
Exactly. And every once in a while, there'll be a Saturday Night Live spoof, of some form of the dating game. Okay, so kind of similar to this, we're also talking about couples here, and that is ABC's The Newlywed Game, also produced by Chuck Barris. This was hosted by Bob Eubanks.
Yes, it was. And I don't think they coined the phrase make whoopee, but they certainly propelled it into the, lexicon of
A bit
slang
overused on the show, my goodness. Apparently, it was the most risque phrase that ABC would let them use at the time.
And yeah, the standards office, oversaw all of this stuff and was very, strict about what could be said and what couldn't be said. It was the Newlywed Game was 3 rounds with not multiple choice questions, open answer questions that either the husband or wife would write on a card the answer, and then the husband would come in and answer the same question, and they'd see if the card matched
hoping
the
to match,
answer
yes.
to get the points. Now, are we going to address the huge rumor of the Newlywed Game? Is the most famous story of the Newlywed Game. I actually went in and looked up. Bob Eubanks wrote an autobiography called In the Book, Bob is the title.
Okay.
Because the most famous story, which is actually sort of an urban legend about the Newlywed Game, is that Bob Eubanks asked the contestant, where's the most unusual place you and your husband have ever made whoopee? And the woman said, the myth is the woman said, in the butt, Bob. And he corrected her immediately and said, no, I need a location.
Place.
It was edited out and did not air on the show. And that's not exactly what she said, according to Eubanks. He said her exact words were in the ass. And he was like, oh my God, cuckoo, put that little cuckoo noise over it. And, but it was edited from the show.
The funny thing about the whole making whoopee thing, though, is that, the original run of the show was from 66 to 74. And at the time it premiered, Eubanks was limited to saying making whoopee. But as the years went on, those restrictions eased a bit. And ABC said, you can kind of say other things, but Eubanks stuck to making whoopee.
Yeah,
he
and
never changed it.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Okay, so now we are going to talk about the game show. Again, Chuck Barris also produced and he hosted it as well.
That is The Gong Show, which only aired from 1976 to 78 in its original incarnation. Some famous people got their start on The Gong Show. The most notable is probably Andrea McArdle, who performed as a contestant on The Gong Show and then went on almost immediately to be cast as the first Annie on Broadway. And it was such a big deal in the 70s.
And she was like 12 years old at the time.
It was a nationwide talent search. And I just, you can remember, I can have these vague impressions of, the girls in their little red curly wigs all showing up at these casting calls to be considered for Annie. And so she was a contestant on The Gong Show, as was Pee Wee Herman, Paul Reubens, and a long list of others that I won't bore you with because they're not that famous.
But that just kind of goes to show like the caliber of people that went on this show.
And all it was for those of you who aren't familiar with the show is it was a talent competition. People came out and performed. And they had this giant gong. And if they were terrible, one of the 3 judges would get up and strike the gong and make the performance stop. And it was hilarious. They effed around all the time to the point where I think some of the studio executives accused Chuck Barris of drinking before he went out to host the show, which he
not saying that he did, but some of the pictures of that show that I've seen, he kind of
I know his hair's all crazy and he's dancing all around. And I think he was just probably a goofy guy, though. I mean, based on the book that we'll talk about in a second. But and then the three judges, Jamie Farr was one of them I remember from NASH. I mean, they were
Yes,
hilarious and everyone's talking. And sometimes the contestants are good, but it was the most fun when they were terrible.
when they were
And the
terrible.
audience would start calling for the gong. I mean, it was like the gladiators of old. And you know, these guys would get kicked off and they'd be all kinds of different things like a one-man band or you know, they were almost intentionally bad. So it wasn't like you felt really horrible for the people getting gonged because they were there kind of to get gonged. But anyway, it was a great show. It was
You
so
know, that
fun.
was excellent branding, calling the show what it was and then having your trademark symbol, that gong. I mean, how could you go wrong with that? And
Right.
you just,
And
those
yeah,
things go hand in hand.
so Chuck Barris, who was the host and was this goofy kind of weirdo guy, wrote a novel called Confessions of the Dangerous Mind, which is a semi-autobiographical story about a game show host who is secretly a a spy for the CIA. Um, and it's the story of him, you know, hosting this game show as this sort of goofy, superfluous, like, you know, guy, and then going off on his missions to, you know, ensure world peace. Um, George Clooney bought the rights to the book, and his production
Yes.
team filmed it. And Sam Rockwell stars as the Chuck Barris character. And I don't think he got an Oscar nomination, but he should have if he didn't.
You should have.
The performance is incredible. His First of all, the resemblance is uncanny, and second of all, Rockwell is a class A actor. I mean, he's incredible. So that movie is, if you have not seen Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, it is absolutely one to watch before, you know, lockdown's almost over. We're all about to be, we're vaccinated and being
We're about
released
to
back
be
into the
liberated.
wild.
Yes.
You're probably at the end of your rope for movies. Confessions of a Dangerous Mind is a great one.
Yes, that is a great suggestion. I just remember enjoying that film from start to finish.
Me
So,
too.
so yeah. Okay.
Great
So
cameos, great little clips of, you know, they've recreated a lot of these game shows that Barris produced. It's just, it's real. I'm going to rewatch it now. It's a
now
really
you
fun
got
movie.
me wanting to read the book as well, you
I
know, because
know.
I've never read the book. I saw the
I,
movie,
I
but
haven't read it either, but I want to now. Yeah.
okay. So speaking of a trademark look, the title of this next program got its name from the shape of the game board. And we are talking about the show Pyramid, which made its debut in 1973, started first on CBS and later moved to ABC.
And right. And Pyramid, you know, it started off, it was the $10,000 pyramid, I think was the first version of it.
Yes.
And then it became the $25,000 pyramid. I think now it's the $100,000 pyramid.
pyramid. So it does increase with the times.
And it has had a laundry list of famous hosts. Pyramid is a great show. I have to say, I think it's my favorite game show.
Okay.
So the hosts, it started off with Dick Clark, who, you know, how can you possibly go wrong?
I always
Johnny
think of
Osmond has
Dick
hosted
Clark.
it. John Davidson has hosted it. Michael Strahan has hosted it.
Michael Strahan is the current
Michael
host.
Strahan has hosted it. It had one celebrity contestant, Billy Crystal, who won the big money when he was a contestant on the show.
I do remember that. Yes.
All the way to the top of the pyramid and set a record for speed on that.
Yes. But you can kind of see him doing that. You know,
yeah.
You've seen of his personality.
and they famously shot a clip of Pyramid with Joey on the TV show Friends, with Joey when he was Dr. Drake Ramore on Days of Our Lives as the celebrity
Forgot about that.
contestant on Pyramid. And obviously he's terrible.
Of course.
With Donny Osmond as the host. So, but the show is great. It's two segments. The first is the contestants sitting at the table describe these things that are done on a field. and the one of the two partners would say, you do this with a horse to dig up the earth, and the other person would say plow, and then you keep going, and you can use your hands, and you can not cheat, but you can have, there's a little more wiggle room. And then when you get to the pyramid, they put their arms through those little handle straps, and you can't use your hands, and you describe only lists of things to get to the pyramid. So like the first thing would be foreign phrases, and you'd say, bienvenue, s'il vous plaît, hola, and then the other person would say,
hello,
foreign words, and then they'd go to the next thing,
Yeah. I think it was that second segment with the pyramid that really intimidated me. That's why I was not welcoming of the show too much. I enjoyed the first part, but the second part was just scary.
I loved it. I have to say, if I had to choose, I'd rather be the clue giver than the clue receiver. It seems like it would be so hard to like put those pieces together in your head under all that pressure.
Yes, there's definitely more pressure on the one receiving, I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that may be uncomfortable watching them doing it.
But the way they really nail it is when they come up with that one item on the list that just can't be anything else, So it was, I would watch Pyramid anytime it was on TV. That was a great show.
It was fun. And I remember discovering it when Dick Clark was already host. So I thought he was the best host of the lineup of hosts for this show.
He's the best.
So we're going to move on to 1966. And this game show premiered in 1966, and it aired up until the mid 2000s in various iterations. And that is Hollywood Squares. So from a pyramid, we go to like almost like a tic-tac-toe board.
In fact, it was a tic-tac-toe board. That was the goal. Which you kind of forget when looking back on it, but that's what they were trying to do. A circle gets a square, X gets a square. They're trying to get tic-tac-toe. And so it was 9 squares with the celebrity in each square. The celebrities were, and what's interesting to me, and was going through this list of game shows, and I thought, game shows must not have had that kind of stigma that they have today, back in the day, back in the 60s and 70s, because you have these actors, Roddy McDowell, Jonathan Winters, Barbara Eden, Rich Little. I mean, these people who were famous at the time doing these game shows. And it just makes me wonder when this switch happened, that you thought, oh, like if you're on a game show, it means your career's over. I mean, maybe these people were a little bit towards the back end of their careers, but Florence Henderson was on Hollywood Squares.
Buddy Hackett.
I mean,
Joan Rivers, Vincent Price, even.
And I'm telling you, I mean, it was a lot of really famous people. So
there's always a big deal was the center square celebrity. Do you remember who the original center square was?
Paul Lynde, the center square, or was there someone before him?
The very first center square was Ernest Borgnine.
Well, there you go. I mean, Academy Award winner, huge actor.
Yes. So yeah, you're right about that. And I don't know either when that all turned around.
It always makes me laugh because there's this episode of Will and Grace where Jack McFarland, Will's, crazy best friend, is trying to figure out who his biological father is. And Karen Walker, the crazy Karen Walker, says they've narrowed it down to 2 people. It's either one of the 4 Black brothers from New Haven, Connecticut, or Paul Lynde, the center square. And I think, God, there really is a resemblance there.
Oh, God. Okay. Our next show, Debbie, the survey says our next game show on the list is
Family Feud.
Family Feud. Ding, 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 ding. Okay. This show premiered on ABC in 1976. And in its first iteration, it ran from 76 to 1985. And our host, Richard Dawson, it was apparently based on his performances as celebrity contestant or panelist from the previous shows that ABC custom made this show for Richard Dawson.
Correct. He apparently approached the producers and said he enjoyed doing it so much, being a guest celebrity, that he would be interested in hosting his own show. And they were quick to agree. He was incredibly well loved and incredibly popular. He was famous on The Feud for kissing the women contestants, and they called him the Kissing Bandit.
Yes,
If
there
you
ever was
want to fall on the floor laughing, if you need a good laugh, just Google Family Feud bloopers, Family Feud. I mean, there are unlimited clips, but the Richard Dawson ones are my particular favorites, although it's always the person answering the question that's truly funny. The host just kind of plays off of them.
Sure.
There's one from Britain that's not with Richard Dawson where the first question the guy says is, name a food you would take with you to the beach. The guy says turkey. And he goes, okay. And they, the pressure and people are just coming up with everything. And so the next question is, what's the first thing you buy at the market? The guy goes, turkey. And the third question is, name a food that is stuffed. And he just starts laughing. He goes, turkey. And I mean, it's hilarious. It's from the British version. And then they do one, name an animal whose name has 3 letters in it. And the guy, serious as day, goes, alligator. And then he explains later that he thought Richard Dawson meant 3 repeated letters, like the same letter 3 times.
That's quick thinking on someone's part, then.
It doesn't, I don't know if it even does. Alligator.
Not at all.
But it was close.
Well, I think what made it funny, you talked about Dawson being the kissing bandit, which if some people see it now, it'll definitely make you cringe. And part of the appeal, as you said, it's the contestants and the answers. And Richard Dawson's MO was to pretend that the outrageous answers made sense. The current host of the show, comedian Steve Harvey, is not going to have any of that.
I know.
And it's actually his reactions that are hilarious.
Steve Harvey is hilarious. He is a great, in between Steve Harvey and Richard Dawson, we had Louis Anderson, Richard Karn from Home Improvement fame, and John O'Hurley
Yes.
From Seinfeld, who all hosted and were all successful hosts, I think.
Yes.
But Steve Harvey, I think, really stepped into his, the role he was meant to play. He's a great host.
And his reactions are so pure. I mean, he in interviews, he's discussed some of the dumbest answers he's received. At one time, the question was, if a robber breaks into the house, what's the most unexpected thing he would hate to run into? And Steve Harvey said you would think somebody would say an owner with a gun or a dark dog, but the contestant answered a naked grandma. Looks at him like, what kind of house has a naked grandma?
Oh my God. Well, comparing Richard Dawson to Steve Harvey and trying to pick the best host is a little bit like comparing Sean Connery to now I'm spacing.
Roger Moore?
No, the new one. The hot one. The guy we love who's married to Rachel Weisz. Daniel Craig. It's like comparing Sean Connery to Daniel Craig and saying which the newest or the oldest, which one was the best.
You're right.
They're all so good. It's just, I could never pick one, but Richard Dawson is kind of my perennial favorite. Game show host, game show celebrity. He just seems like such an appealing, interesting guy. I wish he'd written a memoir, actually. His life was fascinating. He ran away from home when he was 14 and joined the British Merchant Marine and was a boxer and then came to Hollywood. And I mean, it's really quite a story. And then, of course, to cap it off, as only Richard Dawson could do, he married a contestant
that he kissed
on the Family Feud.
Yes.
So
that was actually, it happened in 1981. Gretchen Johnson's family was on
Gretchen
the
Johnson.
show, and they won. The family ended up winning $12,000, and Gretchen ended up being the second Mrs. Dawson 10 years later. So
Yeah.
all that kissing netted him a wife. So do you even know how the kissing got started? Because I found this fascinating, Deb, and it'll never play in this day and age. Apparently, he noticed that a female contestant was just extremely nervous. She was shaking, when it was her turn. So he said to her on the air, "I'm going to do to you what my mother always does whenever I get in trouble." And then he kisses her on the cheek. And since then, the kissing has gone, more from PG-13 to whatever.
I'm telling you, he was quite the
on the
kisser.
lips.
And his little pinky, he'd always hold, he'd hold the index cards, and he had his pinky was a little extended. I don't know if that was his British inner Brit or.
I have no idea.
It had a lot of panache, Richard Dawson did.
Yes. And another thing about Family Feud, which I really thought was very fascinating, how do they get the answers to those survey questions? Do you know
that is interesting. I never even thought about it.
So apparently, they do the surveys usually by phone. And when they get you on the phone, they will ask you about 30 to 40 questions. And the people who are surveyed are just told that they are participating in a survey and are not told that the questions are for Family Feuds. And that's how they survey people. I don't know if it's been updated with, everyone online nowadays, but the last, thing that I see is they still do the phone surveys.
Huh. Little trivia there.
Yes. Okay. So our next and final game show is the longest running game show in American history. The franchise, this surprised me, it actually started in 1956, but it really wasn't until 1972 when it really began its march toward being named by TV Guide as the greatest game show of all time. Debbie, come on down to The Price is Right. Well, when you think of The Price is Right, you think of Bob Barker, who hosted the series from 1972 until his retirement in 2007. That's 35 years.
And after every show, always encouraged his audience to have their pets spayed or neutered.
Which was very sweet. Yes.
Big advocate for the ASPCA, Bob Barker.
Definitely. And he started doing that, not at the beginning of his hosting duties, but later on after his wife died. His wife was a big animal rights advocate, and Bob is too. And so that's when that tradition began. And the current host of the show, Drew Carey, picked up the baton after Bob Barker retired, continues that tradition today.
And yeah, The Price is Right continues to be a great show, a fun premise, guess the price of a normal household item, with a lot of crazy fun games that even if you haven't seen the show in decades, you remember the little yodeling mountain climber where you try and stop in between the two prices, or
that was not my favorite game. I didn't like that game at all.
There was the one with a clock. You had a minute to do. Everyone's favorite is that kind of
the
Plinko board.
Yes.
Where you shoot those discs up into it. The fact that I haven't seen The Price is Right in probably 20 years, and I can still recall a bunch of those games.
And you still know that theme music. You play a couple notes, you already know that it's The Price of Right music. And I think the best part of the show is at the end when they do the showcase.
The showcase showdown.
Oh my goodness, just to see what is in those showcases and to fantasize.
Well, and now the value of those showcases is crazy compared to what it was, 30 or 40 years ago when the show first started. I think the showcases were maybe worth $1,000 or $2,000, which was a lot of money.
And you thought they were extravagant enough before.
Sure. Now it's like crazy.
So speaking of showcase showdowns, it was always exciting. It didn't happen often, but it did happen where the contestant actually won both showcases by guessing the price within like
Within
100 or
$100.
$200 or something.
I think it's
Um,
$100.
yeah, so on this show in September 2006, a woman named Vicki Ann Sadowski made game show history. So not only did she become the biggest winner on The Price is Right, so she won the double showcase, she also became the contestant who's won the most on any network daytime game show. She won $147,517 in one show.
Good for Vicki.
Yes, I'm not too impressed about the dollar amount. I'm more impressed that she won both showcases.
Yeah,
because that
that's
was
quite a
always the
guess.
thing for me. It's like, oh, which one would I choose? Should I pass on this? And
And
I think for the most part, people who had the choice passed, thinking that the second showcase would be better and it would have the cars and everything.
yeah,
But sometimes that didn't happen. Sometimes the first showcase was the better one.
now there were two contestants on The Price is Right who went on to become celebrities.
Oh,
Here's a hint. One of them, a woman, is the hostess on a super popular evening game show currently and has been for many years alongside Pat Sajak. Vanna White was a contestant on The Price is Right.
I was like trying to figure out the year when that would have been. So she was before she was, we know her as Vanna White?
1980. Vanna White was a
Oh, wow.
contestant on The Price is Right.
Did she win anything?
I don't have the stats on her winnings.
Okay.
And the other celebrity went on to become one of probably the most famous fictional meth dealer in the second most famous, I'll say, not Bryan Cranston, but his lackey, Aaron Paul, was a contestant on The Price is Right and
okay.
won. He won.
Fun. I did not know that. How fun.
Yeah.
How fun to have seen that and then recognize him years later.
I mean, crazy.
Okay, so there you have it, guys. I mean, this was so much fun. And if you've been a regular viewer of our show, you know that we love to end each episode with a recipe for a sweet treat. And in choosing this week's recipe, Deb, I figured with the year we've had, it's really never too early to start planning for Cinco de Mayo. Which
people might go crazy. You know what I mean? If the restaurants are all open again, it'll be the first time.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. Really, it's only a few weeks away, and I've got the perfect thing to go with your margaritas or your palomas, and that is Mexican hot chocolate cookies.
Ooh, that sounds great.
These are not only super chocolatey, but they're spicy with just a touch of sweetness. Not really very sweet. You really hit more on the chocolate and the spiciness. I felt like Vian and Chocolat when I was making these cookies because you're adding chili pepper here and there. It's really good. It's really
okay. That sounds great. Yeah, that's right up my alley.
All right. And it's really easy to make. And again, those are Mexican hot chocolate cookies. And as always, we will have that recipe for you on gazellemagazine.com. Well, that is our show for today. We hope you've enjoyed yourselves. Debbie and I always do. Thank you, Debbie, for joining us as always.
Thanks, Trish. That was fun.
All right. And thank you all. And we will see you again next time. Bye.